William, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
We
you,
have,
Sam.
of course, so we've got a few questions that we know will be important to our seniors who are headed off to college in the fall. And we are so excited to have you share your expertise on these questions. Thanks so much.
Of course, more than willing to help.
Great. So the first question that we have is what are the different types of financial aid that are available to help students pay for college?
Okay, well, there's several different kinds of financial aid, and I know just on a personal level, when I was in high school, I just kind of assumed that financial aid meant loans from the government. But come to find out, financial aid is a multitude of different things. Really, just four options. Okay, we're looking at grants being one. Okay, and that can be Pell grants. That's going to be like a need-based grant. So, little background. So when you're filling out the FAFSA, okay, and there's just certain questions you're filling out, questions like how much money did mom and dad make? If I worked, how much money did I make? How many people are in a household? How many people are in college? All those questions, okay, help determine a need. And based on that need, it lets the government know whether or not you need that full Pell Grant amount, something in the middle, or no Pell Grant money at all, okay? And so that's going to be one of the financial aid sources right there. Is going to be grants. Okay, you can also kind of lump in work study, which is also going to be another form of a grant. Okay, and of course that's working part-time at a college or university. That could be doing anything from working at the registrar's office, scanning in documents. You could be working at advisement, just checking in students. You could be working at a library. It could be a multitude of different things, but you're guaranteed to earn a minimum wage, okay? And I know $700, $800 a semester might not seem like that much, but that could be books, okay? And books, you know, as you know, I'm sure, Sam, are a huge expense people can't really plan for because it can go anywhere from $25 from a book to $100 for a book. So work study, that's gonna be another kind of grant, okay? And then if you're looking at the other forms, of course, you got scholarships, okay?
Yeah.
All kinds of different scholarships out there. You got scholarships based off of your test scores and your GPA, but you got scholarships over there based off of like your height. You know, if you're over 6 foot or under 5'5", or they got scholarships for girls if they like to wear high heels, believe it or not. There's a left-handed scholarship. There's twin and triplet scholarships. There's all kinds of scholarships out there. And so really, if you need to fill that gap in your funding, you need to be looking at scholarships. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. Now, other than that, of course, looking at loans. Now, you know, everybody's kind of afraid of the L word and nobody wants to use loans. But in my personal opinion, Sam, there is a such thing as good debt. And in my opinion, good debt is essentially you're putting yourself through school so you can get yourself a good degree, get yourself a good job, and make more money. And that's, in my opinion, what good debt is. And so when you're looking at the loans, you're looking at really the subsidized loan, which is, of course, the government will pay the interest while the student is enrolled, okay? And then you got the unsubsidized, of course, the student's gonna be responsible for that interest. And then if you need to take out another loan, you're looking at that Parent Plus. And the Parent Plus, of course, it has the highest interest rate of all the loans at over 7%. And so they have to make sure they're in good standing with any of their loans themselves. But you can, with that loan specifically, you can get as much money as you need to fill that gap in your funding. But again, of course, it's at that higher interest rate. So those are different sources you're kind of looking at when you're talking about the financial aid.
Perfect. Thanks for outlining that. So students are obviously applying for financial aid before their freshman year, but do they have to reapply every year?
They do. And so a couple of things with that. First and foremost, students, make sure you memorize this date, October 1st, okay? Yeah. That is the date that it opens, and prayerfully, that's the date that you started. Now, I know things happen, of course, but, you know, the earlier you start the FAFSA, the better and the quicker in line you are for, you know, different kind of institutional funding or any kind of aid that you might be trying to get or trying to meet like a priority deadline for a specific kind of school. So long story short, make sure October 1st, you need to make sure you're signing up for your FAFSA, and you need to do it every single year, okay? Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the state app. Okay, and so we're talking about the state app. Of course, we're just talking about like the HOPE program. Okay, but if you do the state application, it's good for 7 years, one and done, and we're just talking about eligibility for just state aid. Now, you don't have to do both the FAFSA and the state application, but I would recommend that just to kind of cover all your bases.
Great. Thanks for that. So one thing a lot of our students are hitting right now is the verification process. Can you talk a little bit about what FAFSA verification is and how a student would know if they've been selected for verification?
Okay, well, I've actually dealt with a few students already regarding the verification process just this semester, and just over the summer, I guess it's to say. And just to let everybody know, when you're thinking about verification or if you get flagged for verification, do not freak out. Okay, it does not immediately indicate that you're in trouble or anything in that regard. With the students that I've dealt with, it typically just means they either missed putting in some kind of documentation for their FAFSA or there's some incorrect information regarding their FAFSA, typically regarding taxes, okay, but not always. And so when you're selected for verification, just keep in mind that it's going to be selected for verification from a school. So let's say you fill out your FAFSA, you put 10 schools on there, and then let's say Columbus State was one of those schools. Columbus State might flag you and say, well, there's something that we saw in your FAFSA application we're not quite sure on. We want you to submit some additional documentation. That could be tax returns, that could be W-2s, that could be a wide range of things. But again, don't freak out. And this is, again, why it's a good reason why you should do your FAFSA early. Mm-hmm. Should you be selected for verification, you want to get that done long before the summertime, preferably, because summertime tends to be a busy period for a lot of financial aid officers. So long story short, make sure you get ahead of it. If you are selected for verification, not a big deal. Just make sure you have your documentation in place.
Earlier the better, for sure.
Yes.
So the next question that we get a lot from students, especially as they're heading into college, which we're kind of in that phase right now, what happens if a student doesn't pass all of their classes, or if they drop a class? Can that impact their financial aid, and if so, how?
Well, it can, okay? And so when we're talking about financial aid, you have to make sure you understand each school's SAP process, okay, students? And so what I mean by SAP process, I mean satisfactory academic progress, okay? Now, each school has their own process. And so what that means is if you decide to say to go to Georgia State, UGA, or Emory, or Mercer, each of those schools are going to have certain stipulations regarding what kind of GPA to maintain, what to do to maintain track for graduation. And so all of these things, you want to make sure you know prior to you being accepted or admitted into that school, just so you are aware of kind of what you need to do to maintain that financial aid. Okay, and should you have some issues with those grades or anything like that, they typically have a process for you to go through, sometimes through the admissions office in conjunction with the financial aid office. But again, each school is different, so you want to make sure you check on that.
Right. So one of the specific scholarships or pieces of financial aid that students are often concerned about they're losing or gaining or anything like that is the Hope Scholarship. And a lot of our students ultimately receive the Hope Scholarship to attend college, which is fantastic. What do students need to do to continue to qualify for the Hope Scholarship once they're in school? And when are those kind of checkpoints to make sure they're still on track for their Hope eligibility?
Okay. And so I'm assuming, of course, all the students are already aware of the basic eligibility requirements. Of course, being a legal resident of Georgia, males, making sure they sign up for selective service, all that good stuff. Okay. And so we're talking about just what you need to do when you're in college. Okay. To get that Hope Scholarship, you need to get that 3.0 Hope GPA. And when you're in college, you need to maintain that same 3.0 Hope GPA. Okay. Now, a little background. Okay. I tend to hear that a majority of students lose hope. No, not lose hope, but lose the Hope Scholarship.
Yeah.
Okay. Their first year or so. Okay. The thing with that is you can lose your Hope Scholarship one time and still gain it back, but you lose it twice, that's going to be it. Okay. And so when we're talking about losing the hope, okay, we're going to check. And what I mean, Georgia Student Finance Commission at a 30, 60, and 90 attempted semester hour checkpoint. Okay, so let's say, I'm just going to make up a student's name. Let's say we have Chad. Okay, and Chad, he's a Hope Scholarship student right out of high school. He goes to UGA. He's kicking butt, his first semester at 30 credit hours, he's good to go. But let's say he drops below that 3.0 when he gets to that 60-hour mark, okay? So if he drops below that, Chad is still able, okay, before he gets to that 90, to gain what he needs in that GPA at 3.0 so he can get that Hope Scholarship back. But if he loses it twice, it's a done deal, okay? So again, just make sure you know the stipulations. College is kind of designed, to challenge you. So you want to make sure that you're aware of, the fact that you might have to relearn how to study. I know I did when I was going to college. I thought, I was a B student. I don't even remember having to study in high school. But, when I got to college, things changed. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Agreed. There are a whole lot of differences, for sure. And I appreciate you letting folks know on the front end what they need to do to make sure they stay on top of their scholarship dollars. So one side of this work is obviously getting enough dollars and getting enough financial aid to cover the cost, but there are also ways you can decrease the cost of college. Can you talk a little bit about ways that you've seen students successfully decrease their cost, whether it's those indirect costs, direct costs, whatever that may be?
Yeah, so, well, first and foremost, because you mentioned direct and indirect costs, just so the students know what we're talking about when we say direct expenses. Direct expenses were things we're talking about tuition, we're talking about fees, we're talking about housing, room and board, parking permits, basically things you pay directly to the institution. And then, of course, indirect, you're looking at like groceries, books, off-campus housing, things that are not paid directly to the institution, but you may have to pay regarding you attending that institution. And so, when we're looking at reducing the costs, you want to look at a lot of different options. You want to look at maybe, do I need to work a part-time job? Okay, and maybe I'm work study, but maybe I need to look at another part-time job in addition to that to help pay off some of my expenses. I know when I was going to college, I did use textbooks the whole time. Didn't make any sense whatsoever to buy new textbooks if I was going to use it for maybe a semester and then return it. Okay, so use textbooks. That's just my personal opinion. I know these days, I think they have something called, I might not have the name right, checks, I want to say, where you can, like, you rent the book and you mail it and they mail it back to you, something like that. So, look at all of those different sources. I know a lot of textbooks are online nowadays. So you want to kind of look at, use textbooks, cheaper residence halls, not trying to stay at the richest residence hall, to stay whatever works for you. And then, of course, loans and scholarships to help fill that gap should you need to. Okay.
Definitely. So with that idea of reducing the cost, getting extra jobs, you also mentioned work study, which I want to go back to for a quick second. If students have been awarded work study, what should they be doing right now over the summer between high school and college to set them up to actually get a job that's going to pay them those dollars? What should they be doing now?
Well, you really want to start that process kind of early when it comes to work study. I know, I don't know if you know, Sam, I actually used to work at Georgia Piedmont. That's where I met you.
Yeah.
And so, early on, we had a work study program at Georgia Piedmont, and we used to tell our students that if you're interested, first and foremost, a lot of people apply to it. Okay, and these are limited positions that are available. It's just like you're applying for a job, and so you need to make sure that you're doing your background work and you're starting early. I can't emphasize that enough. Make sure that if you're trying to get a job at admissions or advisement, that maybe you're meeting those individuals beforehand, maybe stop by the office and just simply inquire, are there any work study opportunities or will there be? And, that way you can actually start speaking to some of the individuals that are going to be making that decision. But again, starting the process early, making sure you fill out online when you're doing your FAFSA, they ask you flat out whether or not you want to be considered for work study. So obviously, if you're if you're going to be working while you're in college, just click yes, okay, and open up some possibilities for you.
For sure. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit. So a lot of our students are thinking about loans right now, and I know you called it the L word before, and I love that because there's this aversion to loans, and I agree. There is such thing as good debt. It's an investment in your future, and most of our students we work with at this point are taking out a subsidized and often the unsubsidized portion of the Stafford loan as well. Um,
Right.
we try to keep them away from private loans as much as possible. We try to keep them
Yeah.
away from the Parent Plus loans as much as possible with the
Okay.
higher interest rates. But um, I would love to hear from you, and I think students would as well. What advice do you have so that students, or what advice do you have for students who are considering taking out loans right now? I would just love for you to even emphasize even more what you had said.
And I heard this from a colleague of mine. I can't quite remember who, but when you fill out your FAFSA, you submit it, and then of course, you're accepted into whatever college, and they send it back that award letter. Okay,
Hmm.
you'll see kind of how much in terms of loans or what you're getting, or kind of what you're getting offered. Okay, um, a key trick, I guess you could call it, as what I call it, or what you could do is see if you can match that loan amount with scholarship money. Okay, if you haven't applied to scholarships at all, it's not too late. Okay, you can use fastweb.com. I think Scholarship Owl, and of course our website GA Futures, and see if you can match. If you're offered, 5,500 in like a subsidized loan, see if you can match that amount in terms of that loan. Now, other than looking at scholarships and everything like that, keep in mind that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the state also has a loan. It's a 1% fixed interest rate loan. Okay, 1% fixed interest. Okay, and I want to emphasize that because, of course, if you're looking at subsidized or unsub, looking at over 4.53%.
Yeah.
Okay, and of course, as I think as you mentioned before, the plus loan, that's going to be high, 7.08, very high interest rate if you're looking at taking out a loan. But I have to also mention that this upcoming, this next academic term that we're looking at for the FAFSA, we're looking at historic lows, in terms of subsidized loan, unsubsidized loan, and
Absolutely.
plus loan. We're talking about 2%,
Wow.
possibly, I'm hearing. Okay, so if you're looking at going to a university for 4 years, you might see some relief here, should you be a subsidized loan or unsubsidized loan recipient
Fantastic.
during that 4-year degree. So some things to kind of look at right there, definitely.
That's great. One last quick question. I know you listed off a couple of them just now. If students need to learn more about the financial aid process, where should they be going? Where can they go to learn? Obviously, we want them reaching out to College Aim, but where else can they go besides us?
Check out our website, gafutures.org. I was actually hoping to find this a flyer that we had for the verification. We have all kinds of information on there. If you, for some reason, haven't completed your FAFSA, you can look up on our website. We have a 1-2-step kind of guide for completing the FAFSA. We have a similar guide if you get selected for verification. Of course, if you're looking for scholarships, just a little quick story. My younger brother, went to Georgia Southern. He applied for 19 scholarships, got over $8,000, and he was a Hope recipient. So if you're looking for scholarships, use the website, sit your butt in the chair, treat it like a job, and you might surprise yourself. But use the website. There's a lot of different websites out there. I think I mentioned FastWeb and Scholarship Owl. Those are two, websites that I'm kind of familiar with. But there are a lot out there. So just keep in mind that you should not have to pay. Let me emphasize this. You should not have to pay for a scholarship, and you should not have to pay to complete your FAFSA. It's a free process. Shouldn't have to pay for it. And if you have to pay for it, then give me a call because we need to talk. But again, look at GA Futures. And also I wanted to mention, a lot of students don't quite know what they want to do when they major or what they want to major in when they go to college. I know when I went to college, believe it or not, I changed my major 9 times. I'm not from Georgia, so we didn't have GA Futures. But if you want to kind of narrow that down, we have a kind of like a quiz on there. It's over 70 questions, and it helps kind of based on your personality kind of figure out what you might be good at or what you can major in. So something to check out, gafutures.org. Memorize that.
Perfect. Hopefully, most of our students are at least familiar with GA futures at this point. Hopefully,
Hopefully,
they've
I
applied
would
through
pray.
there. Yeah, if we're looking at folks who are headed to college, hopefully they are. But thank you for
Right.
emphasizing it. Thank you for all this wisdom and
Of
advice.
course, of course.
This is huge and will be a huge help for our students. So thank you so much, William. I really appreciate it, and look forward
Of
to
course, no problem.
conversations. Surprise, graduates, it's Mr. A. Y'all haven't gotten rid of me yet. I just wanted to pop up quickly to remind you to please complete the form that is listed in the description below. You will be entered in a drawing for a weekly $250 scholarship by completing that form. It should take you 1 or 2 minutes at most, not a big deal at all, and it's the easiest application you can complete for a scholarship all summer. So please make sure you do that. We'll select one scholarship winner each week, and best of luck. We'll see you next week.